Buying a house is more financially beneficial than renting, especially in the long term. But the entry barriers to buying a house are high. There is an income as well as a cash saving requirement. Buying an investment property and breaking into real estate is also a big challenge. It's a great way to build wealth, but it can be very difficult to get started. So in today's video, I'm going to break down an investing strategy that can help you solve both of these problems and help you achieve both of these real estate investment goals. My name is Matthew, and on my channel, I like to talk about growing your career, your income, and your investments. So if that's something you'd like to do, please subscribe to the channel. I'd just like to say thank you for those who have subscribed. The channel's getting new subscribers all the time, and I really appreciate it. So if you've decided you want to buy a property, then this is your checklist. You're saving around 15% of your salary. You're investing your money. You're working off of and understand your budget. You don't have any short-term debt. You have an income growth trajectory, either secondary income or promotion prospects in your career. You're interested in financial education and trying to find ways to solve the money problem. So if this is you, what are your real estate investment strategies? Well, let's unpack a couple of options. The first one is we can rent until we can afford to buy that property, and then potentially after that, go into real estate investing and also acquire an investment property. I made a video on rent versus buying. So I think in that video, I very clearly illustrate that buying is a far better option financially, especially in the long run. So if you want to have a look at that, then check it out. Option two is you do it the other way around. You buy the investment property first, you hold onto that property for a couple of years, you sell it, and then you buy the house that you want to live in. So which option is better? Make sure you watch the end of the video where I'll reveal a third option, and I think this one might really surprise you. So I've jumped into my screen here and I want to just power through some calculations to try and illustrate the difference between the two options. So the first option here is our dream house. Now I live in Australia, so I more or less used the kinds of values that properties go for here. It is approximate and it's sort of purely hypothetical. So the beautiful 4-bedroom house with all the space and the lovely garden, whatever, that costs $1 million example dollars. The other option that we're going to think about is an investment property like an apartment. So something that you're not likely to live in, probably something relatively entry level, sort of 1 or 2 bedrooms in a decent area, small townhouse or duplex. That's the house that we would look at in terms of the investment property option. So let's just start with the first one. So you've got the dream house. It's $1 million value. You need to put down a 20% deposit. You've got to pay your stamp duties. That's the upfront cash required. For the investment apartment, it's a $400,000 apartment. It requires a 20% deposit. Stamp duties on lower value houses are much lower. So you sit with an upfront cash requirement of $83,000, call it $84,000. So option one, which is this one here, you build up your capital by investing until you have enough money to buy your house. Or option two, you buy a small apartment and you rent it out, and then you sell that house and you buy your house. So it's a different route to arrive at the same destination. In both scenarios, you're obviously going to rent until you can afford to buy. And important variables in this whole analogy will be your income threshold, which will obviously impact your borrowing capacity as well as your age. But we'll keep the model relatively simplistic. I'm going to assume that you're not at the beginning of your life, so you're somewhere in your mid-30s and you've got some life savings. So let's use an example where you're 34 years old and you've saved up $80,000. That's pretty much all the money you have to your name. All right. So let's get started. The one other thing we need to understand is our income and expenses. So as I said before, if you're considering buying property, you need to be in a position where you're earning more than you're spending. So here's our income track. So we're doing $120,000 a year and we're doing $102,000 a year. You'll notice that that's about a 15% ratio. If you see my video on the 15% rule, you'll know exactly where that comes from. If you want to have a look at that, then just check it out. All right, so income, I'm just simply going to assume is going to grow at 3% every year, and expenses is going to grow at 3% every year, and that'll just give you a monthly surplus, which is the difference between those two. Okay, so that's the basic setup. So you got your $1 million house, but your $1 million house is a moving target because it's going to appreciate in value every year. So I've also used 3% for that appreciation. So that's what this column represents, the house value as the years go by. And this I need column represents the 20% deposit plus the stamp duties. So what you're required to be able to put down to access the house. Now, what did we say the strategy is? Investing our money until we've saved up enough to buy the house. So we start with the $80,000 that we have, we add our surplus and we invest in something like the S&P 500 at about 7%, and we see our capital grow, okay? And we eventually get to the point in year 8 where the capital exceeds the amount that you need, okay? So we'll just highlight that yellow. We can just mark that there. So option 1, to save up to be able to afford this dream house, going to take us about 8 years. All right, so then let's have a look at option 2. Okay, so remember, we have a $400,000 apartment that we've bought and we're renting it out. So that's our rental income every year. This is our repayments every year, which are fixed because we've taken a fixed term mortgage on the house. This is the value as it appreciates every year. Usually entry-level houses appreciate at a slightly higher rate than a high value $1 million house. So this one I've done at 3.5%, whereas the $1 million house I did at about 3%. You're going to spend about 30% on repairs, maintenance, agency fees, taxes, etc. So that's what we've got there. Those are tax deductible, so you can take a portion of that against your income tax. And then that will result in your annual cash flow that you would then add to your, or you would net off against your surplus that I showed you earlier. All right, so the settlement value is what you would need to pay the bank to settle the loan when you sell the house. So this is basically, as you're paying off the loan, the principal sum that comes down to settle in full. Your surplus is the surplus that we showed you in the previous column, plus your cash flow on the house. And then the liquidation column represents the amount of money you would have if you sold the house. Okay, so what we need to look at is, when does the liquidation column get to the amount that I need? And we can actually see here that when we liquidate and we sell in year 6, we would have enough money to buy the house. So I'll show you. You take this 321, we pan it across here. In year 6, we only need 303. So on that and that alone, it would appear that buying a house right away, renting it out, and then selling it would be better than saving up money and then buying the house in year 8. But remember, I made you a promise that I was going to give you a solution to solve both problems. And I was also going to give you option number 3. So that's what these hidden columns here are all about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide everything up until this point. Okay, so what I've done here is I've looked at the equity that we require to potentially buy both properties. Okay, so that's option number 3. You don't sell. So you either save up and you buy a $1 million house, and then soon after that you buy the investment property, or you buy the investment property and you wait until you can afford to then also buy the $1 million house and you don't sell anything. Is that possible, and how long would that take? So the concept that we'll use to answer this question is that of equity. So when you've purchased an asset, you've already put a 20% deposit into the bond. As you're paying the house off, more equity is going into the bond as you're paying towards the principal sum. So to acquire both houses, all you will need is 20% of the purchase price of both properties combined. So if we have a look at the equity that you're going to require to buy both properties under option 1 or option 2, you'll see it's simply the value of the house plus the value of the house multiplied by 20% plus any additional stamp duties that you'd need to pay. So how it in essence works out is that you would be able to buy the property, either one. So under option 1, where you've bought the $1 million house, you'll be able to buy the $400,000 house 1 to 2 years after that. And on the option 2, where you've bought the investment property, you can acquire it in the same year, so year 9. So it's very close. The options are more or less the same. So it would take you about 9 to 10 years to be able to acquire the house that you live in forever, so your dream house, and an investment property, if you follow either strategy. And I think this just proves the idea of building up a pot of equity and planning towards financial goals, and living within your means is a mechanism to be able to grow your real estate and your investments. So you can see the comparable numbers in year 9. This is the amount of equity you would need to be able to acquire both properties. This is the amount of equity you would have built if you bought the investment property first. This is the amount of equity you would have built if you bought the $1 million house first. So you can see it's very, very close. But for safety's sake, you could say with a high level of certainty that you would be able to do either in year 10. So it'll take you 10 years to be able to purchase yourself your dream home and an investment property if you follow relatively sound investment strategy principles of paying yourself first, putting away and investing 15% of your salary, building that, and just understanding the idea of building equity within loans. Now, to conclude this conversation, these models are based on assumptions, and therefore they are not always perfect because sometimes things don't work out exact. So don't take this anything other than a principle-based example. However, if you use the same logic in both sets of assumptions, it does give you a relatively high level of certainty when you're trying to differentiate between the better of two options. Let me know in the comments which option you think is better and which one you'd like to pursue. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like if you got value from it and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back next week with another video. Until then, stay safe and thank you for watching.